Labour MPs warn government digital ID scheme will unnecessarily cost support. There is a chance, albeit a very small chance, that digital ID won't happen in the UK. Over the past week, the language being used by the British government has changed, but also support within our current British government has moved away from digital identification, with various MPs questioning whether it's worth it. Now, the current Labour government in the UK have said that the initial purpose of digital identification is to fix some core purposes. I personally don't believe the reasons they've given, but these are the reasons they've given. 1. To slow down, reduce or stop the rate on which illegal migration is taking place into the UK at the moment. 2. To make the services and systems within the UK simpler to use for everyone, including the government. And 3. To modernise Britain, to bring Britain into the new tech age of identification systems. But very quickly, just a big thank you to private internet access. If you're looking for a VPN that doesn't keep any logs, that respects your privacy, and also has one subscription that works on all of your devices, make sure you check out private internet access at the link down below. With my link, you get yourselves 4 months free, 86% off, and it's the best way to support the channel. And also, it's just a bloody amazing VPN, and it's absolutely rapid. So go and check them out at the link down below, or you can scan this QR code right here. Back to the video. Now, some of the backbenchers within the Labour government are now starting to speak out, and now some of them are even saying that this won't stop illegal immigration. And it's true. It won't. At the end of the day, if someone's willing to come to the UK, break tens of laws in the process, needing a digital ID once they get to the UK won't really do anything. More to the point, you don't actually need a digital ID according to the current British government, which we'll talk about. The government risks losing support over its proposals for digital IDs, Labour MPs have said, as they've raised concerns about the impact on civil liberties and the cost. Well, why didn't these conversations happen at internal Labour Party meetings before the plans were announced? Technology Secretary Liz Kendall said the digital IDs would only be mandatory for employers to see the right to work checks, as the government bids to clamp down on illegal working. Now, this sentence actually sums up the essence of digital identification. The government have repeatedly said that digital identification in the UK would not be mandatory. We will not definitely need it to exist in the UK. But they are saying for employers to give someone a job, they legally have to check digital identification. Well, how can that employer check identification unless the person they're interviewing has digital identification? They can't. So everyone needs digital identification. However, Ms. Kendall added that for those that wanted to, it could improve access to public services. Now, this is kind of a bit of a hint. More of a hint of what's to come if digital ID is introduced into the UK. When talking about public services, they're talking about things like NHS and all the various benefits that you get as being a citizen in the UK. While I'm on the topic of the NHS, by the way, a lot of people from the US seem to think that the NHS is free in the UK. But the thing is, it's not free. We actually pay for these services in the UK. We pay national insurance, and all of these things go into the system, and also these things go up in price. In fact, what we pay in national insurance charges sometimes is more than some countries pay for private medical insurance anyway. Whilst it's not lost on me that we're very lucky to have the National Health Service in the UK, it's not free. Nothing's free. But going back to the video, of course, this whole idea that digital identification would prove access to these services is very worrying. At the moment, our names and some other information stored on the NHS database, so when we walk into a hospital or walk into a doctor's surgery, they can just access our health records of our weight, height, previous conditions, all of this stuff. That stuff roughly exists, and that's just limited to that capacity. Having digital identification will not make that process easier, faster, safer, or anything. What you're doing is taking multiple data sets and putting it all into one database, which of course is massively problematic. With digital identification, they're selling you the dream that everything's going to be easy to use, contacting HMRC is going to be a walk in the park, all of these processes are going to be easy, then that gives them the power to start taking things away from you if you don't comply, if you don't sign up to their new ID scheme, if you don't sign up to whatever they introduce after the ID scheme. And I've spoken about this before, but there's a process that a lot of companies use, especially social media companies, called enshittification, where they attract you to a service of all these benefits, then over time they remove those benefits and add in things like paywalls or subscriptions or different requirements that you may not agree with. The government's basically taking the corporate approach to digital identification. Meanwhile, individuals would not face sanctions, only employers, and the police would never demand to see the IDs, Miss Kendall says. Now, there's so much to break apart on that sentence, but we'll just start off with a very basic thing. Individuals that didn't have digital identification would not face sanctions. Well, already it's been intimated that to access certain governmental services, we would need digital identification. So yes, we're already caveating that sentence right there. Then the next thing there, only employers. Like I've just said, employers would be required to check digital identification. Therefore, the person that's looking for the job that doesn't have identification is already being penalised for not having identification. Also, this is all null and void because just a week ago, it was confirmed that to have a job in the UK, you would need identification. So no, it's not just employers, it's your standard run-of-the-mill citizens also. Everyone. Next, the police would never demand to see the IDs. Now, the police can demand identification, but at the moment, no one really carries their passport with them, and not everyone has a driving licence. So when you are taken to a police station and demanded to identify yourself, if the only thing you've got on you is digital identification on your phone, then yes, that's how you're going to have to identify yourselves. It's not difficult. And as it is, the police seize phones all the time and access all the content within it. So it's not about whether the police asked, it's about you being backed into a corner where your digital identification is the only ID you will carry on you anyway. Which then links back into part of the problem where this is dystopia. She said the government had learned from countries such as Estonia and Denmark, who had used the IDs already and allowed people to tell their story once when dealing with public services. Okay, let's start with Estonia. Small population, in fact, Birmingham has a bigger population than Estonia has. Around 75% of all people that have signed up to digital identification in Estonia have had their data leaked. It's going great. Now here's where the news starts to get a little bit better. Now recently, Keir Starmer spoke in India about digital identification. It's something that he touched on during like a kind of Q&A session / answering some questions and talking about some topics. And one of the things he spoke about is that this is going to go for consultation towards the end of this year. So what they're ideally looking for is at the moment, they've put the information out into the world and they're seeing what's going to come back. They're seeing what resistance they're going to get and they're basically testing the water. That's what that initial announcement was about just a couple of weeks ago. It was basically throw some shit at the wall, see what sticks and see what drops down onto the floor. And that's what they've been doing at the moment. Now, since that announcement was made and all the backlash has happened, conveniently a load of people within the Labour Party have now all of a sudden decided it's a bad idea. And that's why we're reading this very article right now. Every week, just a couple of Labour MPs are starting to vocalise their issues with digital identification, and they're making that known, not just in the case of internally at the Labour Party, but also relatively publicly as well. Now, whether this is these MPs trying to save face in case this doesn't work out, they want to be on the right side of history, I don't know. I'm not really in the business of speculating, and as far as I'm concerned, I don't care about their reasons. If they're rejecting the ideology of digital identification, they've got my support. Every day that goes by, the more people that talk about it, whether it's videos like this or comment sections or social media posts or polls that we see online, petitions, mainstream media, not so mainstream media, whatever it might be, the more people talk about this and the more people vocalize their unhappiness with digital identification, when it eventually gets to the point of them actually discussing this at the end of the year in Parliament, and the more MPs that start to turn against this within the Labour Party, the more likely it is that this won't actually come into effect. Not only do they have the whole monumental task of convincing the UK population that they are somehow better off for doing it, but they've also got the task and the cost of implementing it. Costs which have to be approved by MPs, processes that have to be approved by MPs, and the more MPs that turn against this, the more difficult it is for Keir Starmer to be sat in that chair at the top. A consultation will begin before the end of the year, MPs heard, as they were told any system will be built in-house. Now, this is also really interesting as well, because the government have previously stated in the past couple of weeks that they've been seeking third-party advice on how to build these systems, which does lend me to believe that maybe the government at the moment doesn't have the team, system or infrastructure in place to build this in-house. And if they do, it's going to be thrown together relatively quickly, which is a problem within itself. It would be a rush security system based around the national security of our country. Also a red flag. Ms. Kendall said that when you look across other countries and what they're doing, it really has made government fit around people rather than make people fit into government and its different services. And I think that's a huge benefit. Liz Kendall is comparing the situations in the UK, which at the moment, the UK with its vast population has a significant set of issues that kind of tailor themselves around pre-existing issues that have existed for 30, 40, 50 years, but also new issues that are facing the country, such as the weird sorts of immigration that we're getting in the UK at the moment, and people illegally residing in the country, and also the crimes and stuff that have come with that. We're in a very weird situation as a country, so comparing the status of the UK to a country like Estonia, which barely has any population at all, and countries like Denmark, which have a vastly different ecosystem to the UK. In fact, Denmark and Norway and the Scandinavian countries have a much better system for living in those countries than we do in the UK. You can't just copy and paste their strategy for digital identification to the UK. More to the point, as we've explained earlier in the video, their systems don't work anyway. However, Miss Whittam, Nottingham East, warned the government risked burning through political capital. She added, "I don't know how many doors I've knocked on in my 12 years as a Labour member, but I do know that not a single person has ever told me what they really need to improve their lives, their community, and this country is mandatory digital ID. It won't tackle irregular working, it undermines civil liberties, it's divisive among the public, and won't make any difference to people's lives." Miss Whittam, I don't know who you are, but thank you. So I asked the Secretary of State, why are we doing it? Why are we burning political capital and public money on this instead of focusing on the issues that are really impacting our constituents? I worry that this is yet another huge mistake. Her party colleague, Mr. Bergen, Leeds East, said, "Given the serious threats that digital ID poses to civil liberties, our data security and risk of data being handed over to US tech giants, I'm firmly opposed to digital ID. However, isn't it also a really big waste of money? And shouldn't the government be instead focusing on what is the number one priority for people across the country, which is tackling the cost of living crisis? And wouldn't the money from this better be pushed into that, while safeguarding civil liberties?" Miss Nichols from Warrington North said, "I've been contacted by a large volume of constituents in recent weeks, whose healthy scepticism that digital ID will make a material difference in tackling illegal immigration I share." She asked for Miss Kendall to give concrete examples of how digital IDs could be used by the public. Miss Kendall replied, "I do believe in future there are many really important voluntary ways in which people getting better access to services and support, and will be consulting on that fully when we come forward with those detailed proposals." Miss Kendall refused to give a figure for how much it cost, despite being pressed on it by Miss Creasy from Walthamstow. Here's a huge problem. The government are saying things like it's going to make X, Y, Z better, but they can't expand on how. Why? What is the process to getting there? What will our digital ID have that our current passports or driving licenses don't? Other than being in the hands of the government 24/7 and being accessible by third parties all of the fucking time. And this is one of the monumental problems with the current British government. They know that having digital identification on everyone's phone massively benefits them. But because they don't understand the tech, they don't understand the security risks, they don't understand all of the other issues, problems and liabilities that come with it, they're not able to give a clear and concise answer of why it's required in the first place. All they're doing here is hoping that they can just sell the idea that it's going to be better and hoping people will just eat it up. This is a prime example, and this isn't anything against the Labour Party or any other party in general. This is a prime example of just politicians being politicians. They survive on votes, they survive on popularity, and they're trying to sell something to people because they're salesmen. A lot of MPs, for the most part, really don't give a shit why the government want to introduce it. They're not really interested in getting into those pedantic discussions. Their job as a member of those parties is to sell it to the public and to make sure that they get votes the next time round. And I think what's starting to happen here, evidently as we can see, is people are emailing politicians en masse. People are vocalising their very understandable and reasonable criticisms of this being introduced, and MPs are thinking, well, I'm not going to get voted again, am I? We're not going to win the next election, so if we're going to be within a fighting chance, at least I want to be on the right side of history and people look back at the Labour Party and think that I'm not one of the people that tried to push this through. And you know what? This is going to be controversial, and I welcome discussion and debate in the comments down below and people disagreeing with me. I genuinely, please, I'm down to be educated on this. There's a part of me that some of these MPs that are within the Labour government, I do feel a bit sorry for. I know, controversial, but a lot of them would have come into politics or come into the Labour Party with their own set of ideals on what they want to see happen. And some of those things might be noble. Every single party in British government, there's always good people in those parties that try and do the best for their personal belief systems or what they stand for. And whether you're left or right, it doesn't really fucking matter. There is a good egg in every single party. But Labour government have come into power and loads of these different MPs have realised they don't really have a say. Whatever comes from the top, they've got to be part of that process of selling that to their local area and to the rest of the country. And when it comes to digital identification, which pretty much unanimously everyone agrees is a shit idea, a lot of MPs can't really toe that line because it would involve them just flat out publishing stuff that is complete lies. In the case of Liz Kendall, saying that it's not mandatory, but it's only mandatory for businesses, then have to check digital identification of employees, which means to get a job you need identification, while saying not everyone needs identification. What is the logic there? So a lot of these MPs are having to toe the party line on something that makes absolutely zero sense, and they're put in this situation where, hang on, am I voting against my own party? That sort of approach to thinking. Now, of course, Miss Kendall refused to give a figure on how much it would cost, but Miss Creasy said that she's seen figures of it costing between 1 billion to 2 billion to establish the scheme, then ongoing to 100 million a year to run it. She also said that the cost of a data breach could account to 1.1% of GDP, which is high for one individual thing. To account for 1.1% of GDP is fucking nuts. Miss Creasy said, Miss Kendall said this would be free. Ultimately, the taxpayer will have to pay for it. She added, could she give us, if not a ballpark figure for the capital and revenue cost she's envisioning for what is set out? Miss Kendall replied, I think we also need to look at the potential benefits of this in terms of savings from cracking down on fraud, from making services more effective and efficient. She still hasn't clarified how anything will be more effective and efficient, but hey, don't ask too many questions now. And clearly the eventual cost of this will depend on the design and build, which is what we're consulting on. The Conservatives claim that the scheme will fundamentally shift the balance of power between citizen and state, which is very true. I know I talk about it a lot, but like in examples like, private internet access, they sponsor their VPN company, they sponsor a lot of these videos. And in the case of that, like when you go online, you have the ability to, obviously there's no such thing as 100% secure, but you can take control of some of your privacy, and that's brilliant. And there's websites out there where you can like remove yourself from mailing lists and like online databases. That is a sense of control that we have to like be in possession of our identification, and things like having our physical passport tucked away somewhere at home. We know where it is. Although obviously the government have passport numbers and all of that, we at least have the physical copy that the government aren't checking. Like, that's in our cupboard, it can't be tracked. Digital identification is so invasive. It's like in the thing that's in our pocket 24/7. It's with us, it's where we are, it's what we spend our money on, it's where we go, who we talk to, it's everything. It's linked to all of that. And that's one of the core issues here. Anyway, make sure you check out private internet access at the link down below. If you did enjoy today's video, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I shall see you all in the next video.